What is going on, everybody? Welcome to an episode of Unfiltered Conversations. And today's kind of an exciting one because this is a topic that goes back to something Darren brought to our attention almost 4 years ago now. Good Lord, wasn't this 2020
I
or
know, it's
21? We
crazy
needed.
to think that I've known you that long, really. It's gone
Good
so
Lord.
quick.
I know. Wow,
Yeah.
throwback there. But yeah, seriously, this has been something that has been really, really fascinating to us here at the Unfiltered. And we wanted to do this again since Darren just came off of a trip. So we're doing the Great Torrington tonight, the
Yeah,
Battle of
Battle of
Great
Great Torrington. So what I'll do in a minute, guys, I'll give you an overview of the English Civil Wars because it's quite a complicated period of time, especially in England, you know. Yeah, it's great to be. I'll get into it in a minute, but it's great to be back though, Tyler, because it's been a little bit, mate.
It has, and
So
Anthony's
what have you been up to? Let's ask you first. What you've been doing?
really working, man. Getting ready to start doing some fun stuff with the Unfiltered. Actually, I'm doing some planning. We have a few things coming up. Wednesday, we have Chris White coming on talking about the Overland campaign.
I'm
So
excited
I
about
know
that.
we're really, really stoked about that. We got some cool stuff happening in March as well, which I have not been made on my page just in detail what we're doing yet. We're still trying to get our end together as to what exactly we'll be helping with. But there's a fun walk happening, and we'll be a little more in depth with that as we go along and kind of get the details figured out.
Awesome.
That's what's been going on our end. We also have Anthony down below there. Anthony, say hello. Hi.
Hello, 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 hello.
He's an A again tonight. We don't see him for some reason.
And Anthony, you're working somewhere else now, aren't you? Tell us about it.
Yes, it's a cool realm that I'm getting into, but I'm still busy on all things history and Manassas. So more on that Manassas stuff later, but also doing a lot of travel and hoping to get over to England in the next couple of maybe next year.
Awesome. Well, when you do, give us a shout and I'll
Absolutely, mostly for stuff with spears and swords.
we can do spears and swords.
Spears and swords.
Richard III is not a murderer. He had them killed. He did not kill them.
Well, what you've got to remember about all of that is the history is written by the winners, and on that occasion, the Tudors are the winners.
That's true. That's true.
Richard III is written as the villain because of that. So there is a lot of. Have you seen the documentaries about the King in the Car Park? Things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah,
I have not seen King in the Car Park.
you
were talking to me about that like 2 weeks ago, right, Truso?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so obviously I know we're going to talk about Torrington in a minute, but this is another thing I'm fairly passionate about is that, you know, again, that they thought he was buried somewhere else and they found him in his car park in Leicester, in the middle of the city of Leicester, under a car park. And they're pretty certain it's him because his spine is curved and, you know, but then Shakespeare got hold of the story of everything and made him into this villain. And there's all this myth behind him murdering his nephews in the Tower of London. Again, you know, it might be Tudor propaganda. You just don't know. The War of the Roses is a complex period of history as well. You know, it's actually an English civil war technically in a way, like we'll be discussing today, but slightly different, you know, things going on. But it's more to do with the royal families arguing against each other, the families, you know, the powerful families in England. But yeah, it's an interesting period. So yeah, it's definitely worth looking up.
Needed a break from the American Civil War, so I
don't blame you. Everyone needs that sometimes, you know.
Went to the first British Civil War.
It technically is, yeah, and I mean it's quite a long war as well. It's very complex as well. You know, there's a lot of things involved, but you do get that power shift from the, you know, Richard III is the last Plantagenet king of England. You go to the Tudor line, but yeah. So anyway, guys. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the English Civil Wars because, again, it is quite a complicated war. Now, one of the things that happens is King Charles I comes to the throne in 1625. And one of the things he does first is gets rid of Parliament for 11 years. And the thing is, at this point in time, he needs Parliament to get money, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1639, there's a thing called the Bishops' Wars, which is between him and the Scots. Now, he goes to Scotland, tries to reform the Scottish Church, and they don't like it, so they rebel. They invade northern England. They invade Newcastle. But he needs money and he can't get any, so he has to recall Parliament. But before they'll sit in Parliament, they have got a massive list of grievances. And so, you know, it's hard going. Anyway, the two parties, I'm not going to go too deep because you could be here all day. But the two parties involved are the Royalists and the Parliamentarians, okay? Most of the battles take place in England, but there are a few in Scotland as well. But technically, it's 3 wars. So it's called the English Civil Wars or the War of the Three Kingdoms. And that is because Ireland is involved in this as well. And at the time, Ireland is actually part of the Kingdom of England. It's ruled by the King of England. But also, the point that Charles I comes in, his father, James I, was also King of Scotland. So in 1605, when he comes to the throne, or when that period, I think it might have been a bit earlier than that, that's the first time you get the union between England and Scotland. So, you know, they are part of one kingdom at that point because of the king, you know, because Elizabeth didn't have a child, you know, so he basically takes the throne. And then the English Civil Wars themselves start in 1642 and actually end in 1651. So it's quite a long period. But in that time period, there's little breaks in it. The one I'm going to focus on today happens in the first English Civil Wars. Okay. So I just want to explain a little bit about the armies of the time as well before we get into it, because they're completely different to what American Civil War is and the modern wars. Even when you get into, like, you know, the Revolution period,
and that helps because I'm coming into virtually nothing other than what I've known from you. Like,
cavalry is the king at the time on the battlefield. At this point in time, it's like a tank, you know. So you've got to have something to protect yourself, and they have pikemen. And most of the European armies have pikemen at this point. I think they've had them since, you know, Henry VIII, maybe even longer than that. There's been pike on the battlefield. They're 18 foot long. They've got a massive sharp object on the end. And their idea is you protect against charge of cavalry. Because the horse sees that pike head, it's not going to go anywhere near it.
Yeah.
So that's the point of it. You also have musket blocks. And again, this is still the early stages of, you know, firearms in a way. I mean, they've been using them since Henry VIII's time, but longer than that. I mean, obviously, we know that the Chinese come up with this gunpowder stuff, and the Europeans just lap it up, you know.
There's some kinks to figure out still. So
so you're going on about some of those medieval battles, Anthony. I mean, you know, they're using gunpowder during that time as well. I mean, some of the hand cannons were like death traps. There's like like a pole with bloody, where they just held it and blew themselves up. They didn't actually kill anyone, you know.
So almost some experimental things happening there too.
Sort of, you know, it's but this is gunpowder. This is the peak time of gunpowder and cannons and all that sort of thing, you know. At the time, England is not a good place to live, you know. It's not that well off. There's a lot of problems, you know. But gunpowder is ruling the world at this point. It's getting around, and weaponry's changing. You know, we do have cannons at this point. They do, and the muskets are all smooth bore, you know, round balls. They're more sort of matchlock. You do get a few flintlocks, I think, at that point. But the technology is changed a little bit, you know, compared to 100 years before. And then you also have, like I said, the cavalry, and the cavalry is everything. There's a misconception about Oliver Cromwell. They think Oliver Cromwell is, he takes over at the end and becomes Lord Protector. But at the start of the English Civil Wars, he's not. He's just in the background somewhere, you know. Yeah, he's causing problems, but he's not at the forefront of the problems.
Right.
At the beginning, he is literally just a cavalry commander, and he's a damn good one too.
Is he?
He's a very good cavalry commander. He actually revolutionized cavalry charges. They have a tactic, especially the Royalists, of charging the baggage train after the battle. So they would charge, and then they'd run off the battlefield and go and do something else. Oliver Cromwell teaches his guys to reform and go again. And so that wins them a battle in 1645 at Naseby.
Okay.
You know, so that's a massive battle. But obviously, I haven't really got into the Civil War yet. But again, it's all about the balance of power. You know, Charles I wants. So the thing is, what's been ingrained in Charles's head is his father has told him, and then that's the way he was taught, is that it's the divine right of king. Basically, there's nobody above you but God. God has anointed me as King of England, and I'll do what I want. Why should I have somebody tell me what I can spend and what I can do? But unfortunately, it's not like that anymore. Times have changed, and Parliament owns the money. So
Right.
if you want something, you've got to ask them, you know. And if you're peeing them off, they're not going to give you anything. One of the biggest mistakes Charles makes is he takes armed guards into the Houses of Parliament, and he tries to seize 5 conspirators that have been spreading rumours and crap about him within the London community of like, oh God, I can't remember what their names are. They're apprentices. Okay, so they're really key. You know, they're like apprentices, as in like apprentice bakers, apprentice arms smiths, things like that. He roused them up, you know, and so he starts losing support in London. So, but taking armed guard into the Houses apart, firstly, as far as I'm aware, you're not allowed to take, or the king is not allowed to step, or the royal is not allowed to step foot in the House of Commons. So he breaks a rule
Kind
there.
of a tradition there,
Yeah. And he goes in there with armed guards, and he wants these 5 people arrested, and they won't give him up. So he literally is left red faced, and he has to escape London. Ends up up north trying to rally support. Unlike the American Civil War, where you have North versus South, England split quite badly, and there's pockets of everything everywhere. So it's not just as simple as having North versus South.
Right, you would spread out all over the place.
Exactly. So you've got, although the majority of the West Country is royalist, there are some ports down in because Charles did this thing called ship tax that's upset a lot of people, and I'm not going to go deep into that because you'll be here all day. But some of the big ports in England, like Plymouth and that, they went parliamentarian because they didn't like the way Charles was taking money off them, you know. So you've got that, and so he raises his standard in Nottingham, and that's the end of it. Then they raise arms then. And again, this is before professional armies in England as well. So to raise an army, it was very similar to, raising your regiments during the Revolution or the American Civil War.
Right.
You went to your, lord or whatever, and slightly different in England at the time, but you raised your bands, train bands, people that basically only, would train as a soldier on a Sunday afternoon after church. So it's, there's no army. But people are so angry with what's been going on. But of course, the common man is just being fed a load of rubbish, probably. Oh, come and fight for me. I'm rich, I'll pay you, Of course, they don't get paid, do they?
No. But they're going to go in there with the assumption that they do. So,
exactly.
For the first bit, until it's proven they're not going to get paid, who knows what the fighting force is going to be, especially if they have a decent fighting spirit going on within the army.
And also, as these 3 wars go on, the objective changes. The objective at first is not to get rid of or abolish the royalists. The royals, the monarchy. It's not. That's not the game.
Right.
But it changes over time, And that's when you see Oliver Cromwell at the end take and seize power. It's sort of like a military coup, really. At the end, it's quite complex. But yeah, so he raises his standard, and that's it. They've had enough. And there's 4 years of real bloody horrible fighting, and I mean horrible. And this is brother against brother, like I was saying, father against son, because the whole villages, towns were split right down the middle. But they're just destroying each other, and it all comes ahead at 1645 at a place called Naseby, which is one of the biggest battles in the English Civil War. Now, these battles are actually quite small in comparison to some of the American Civil War battles. We're talking like 20,000 on a battlefield, They're very small,
in comparison, yeah, but that's still a large amount of people to be, assembled in one place. So I get it, though. It is.
A lot of the fighting takes place in the Midlands of England. So, like Birmingham area, all that sort of thing. And that is because of the road networks, they all sort of go up that way and come down that way, to London. During the Civil War, London is the capital of Parliament. Charles I has to just completely abandon London. He ends up in Oxford.
Again, if you don't mind if I have a question.
Yeah, no, carry on.
What's the topography like on an English Civil War battlefield, if I might ask? I know you haven't got into a lot of the
Um,
fighting yet, but yeah, like what is the topography like? Like, what kind of ground are these troops fighting over?
it depends where they are. I mean, the Midlands is just it's just some of it's hilly, some of it's not. You know, it's nothing like America. We haven't got these big mountains. You know, not really. Um,
Yeah,
it's nothing compared to like America.
right.
A lot of it's quite rural, sort of like
Mhm.
farmland. You know, with few rolling hills, if you know what I mean. If you think of England as that rolling hills, and it's like that, you know.
It is.
Particularly in the Northamptonshire area and the Midlands area, it's all quite
Okay.
farmlandy, quite sort of like so. Yeah, but there's no mountains or anything like that. There's big
Right.
rivers, and there's
Sure. So
only
there's
certain
still
areas that are-
obstacles,
oh, definitely. I
geographically.
mean,
Yeah.
the River Thames is massive. It runs all the way
Right.
from London all the way into through Oxford and beyond.
Mhm.
And again, there's rivers up north like that.
Okay. Well,
So
sorry for that.
yeah,
I just wanted to try to get a mental image
yeah,
of
yeah.
what I'm looking at there.
Yeah,
Also, Anthony asked the question: do you happen to have a map to send over while you're talking as well,
I
or can
can.
you
Yeah,
show one or something?
I can.
I might
I
pull.
have. I do have a map in this map book actually. But I'd have
Sweet.
to take a photograph of it and send it to you quickly.
Okay. No, and that's fine. We have some time for that. That was a
But,
good way to segue into that map because right there, like understanding the topography, obviously being so essential. But that's cool.
but again, but then just going back to the war. So while I'm
Mhm.
trying to find this picture,
No,
and
take your time,
show
man.
you, um, in the Second English Civil War. And the reason the Second English Civil War happens is I'll get into more detail in a minute. A lot of action happens down here in Kent. Kent's just flat.
Right.
There's nothing. It's just flat.
Perfect
I mean, you've got
battlefield.
the cliffs, you've got the white cliffs and stuff like that, but in between, it's just farmland. It's not really. There's not really much to it at all.
And yeah, the less geographic obstacles you have, the better.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Lake District in England, but I'm sure things happen there where you've got a mountain range, but
Mm.
it's nothing compared to like the Blue Ridge Mountains or you know.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
Yeah,
some of
no
those
shit.
American Civil War. I mean, even the Continental Army and the British at the time of the Revolution. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the British couldn't handle it. Probably is because of the terrain. I
Yeah.
mean, look at the geography, look at the terrain. Like you bring up a valid point because that really does hinder an army, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. Yeah,
Move
sure.
around, you know.
Oh, look.
Oh, Mark's on.
Mark, how's it going, man? It's good to see you on. Hope everything's well with you. We're talking about your neck of the woods, or not your neck of the woods, but history you'd prefer to teach other than our Civil War
I
here. Our
did
Civil
send
War
you.
is cool.
I did send you a picture.
All right. I think I just got that's what that weird thing did.
Stonewall should be buried in a car park. No, no. Come on, mate.
Stonewall is pretty cool.
Come on, mate. Anyway, yeah. So I've lost my train of thought now, so I'll get so into it. Now, so anyway, I was talking about Naseby when I so
Mm-hmm.
Naseby's sort of like it is. Let me explain. I've been to Naseby, right? So you've got two ridges either side of each other, and the battlefield goes down into like a bowl. But it's farmland. That's
There we go.
basically a map of Britain. Sorry, that's in the map book. It's got all the battles on there.
Mm-hmm.
You
Perfect.
see this big concentration in the sort of West Country middle area.
Mm-hmm.
Where most of it takes place, and again, it's because of the road networks, really.
Very cool. Amazing.
Anyway, so after the Battle of Naseby, the Royalists are defeated. The reason they're defeated is because this cavalry I'm telling you about,
Mm-hmm.
Prince Rupert. And this is the thing with Prince Rupert. He's a dashing cavalier, with his nice feathered hat. And from what I understand, and I don't know whether it's true, but Jeb Stuart actually modelled himself on a cavalry person.
Really?
That's the way I understand it. The way he had his
Okay.
hat, feather. Again, I don't know whether that's true, but you look at him; he does look like that sort of dashing cavalry commander,
Mm.
with the feather in his hat. But yeah, Prince Rupert would actually rid off the battlefield and left his whole army exposed, and they were defeated.
Well, as you're talking about Prince Rupert, Derek Rupert
Oh yeah,
asks
there you
how
go.
much of that is preserved.
Oh yeah, there's a fair bit of it. There's a fair bit of
Mm.
it, but because we've got so much stuff, it's very hard to You know, I think you'll find a lot of the main battlefields, even going back to what Anthony was talking about earlier about King Richard III time. And I mean, Mark will know more about that because he's been to some of them. Maybe he wants to tell us, but he's been to quite a few of those battlefields up there, and there's still quite a few there. There's, I think it's Taunton's apparently quite an eerie, haunting place. There's some real butchery went on there, you know. There's horrible stuff.
I mean, that's some intense fighting too, from the weapons you were describing.
Oh,
just
yeah.
some of the visuals I've seen too. Just to try to imagine that kind of intense combat is awesome.
And try and explain the cavalry as well, because at the time it wasn't, you know, like so American Civil War. Also, cavalry's changed, isn't it, by the American Civil War? Whereas it's sort of, I know they do fight and they do sabers and they do hand-to-hand.
But you're not seeing a lot of pikes, to my understanding. Like you're seeing.
No. But the way they had a pistol. They would have had a pistol, but they would have to get so close and they would hold it over their arm like that and shoot it, you know, like that. So they would have to get really close to each other to kill each other with a pistol, which would have been like a matchlock sort of thing.
Sure.
You know, they did have swords. They would have probably used swords as well. But again, you know, the cavalry was the most important thing. But yeah, Naseby was a real big defeat for Charles I, and he never recovered from that. But from there, he disappeared for a little while. There you go. Look, Mark's put something good up.
Yes, he has. Mark says Towton's the bloodiest battle of the English, or on English soil. Approximately 1% of England's population died that day. Holy crap!
Oh, yeah.
This is the English Civil War.
No, that was
Towton.
that was, I think,
War of the Roses.
War of the Roses. Okay.
But anyway, Charles I disappears for a little while, and he ends up going to Newark. Now, Newark is where the Scottish are. Now, the Scottish during the English Civil Wars were fighting for both sides. Sometimes they would fight for whoever paid the money. Now, the Scottish government's broke. Charles I, he's the King of Scotland as well, don't forget. So he's gone there thinking, I'm going to get support here. And they don't. They take him captive. And they keep him for a couple of months. And they actually negotiate with the English Parliament and say, if you give us £100,000, we'll give him to you for nothing. Or not for nothing, we'll give him to you. You can have him. So they do. They get £100,000. And I don't know what that is back then, but it was a lot of money. You know. So Charles I ends up in captivity at that point. This is before the Battle of Torrington.
Right.
So now technically the English Civil War is over. But there's still pockets of people that resist and won't give up. And so this is where Torrington comes in. So down in a place called Truro, there is a council of war taking place. And that's down in Cornwall. So I did give you a map of Britain, didn't I? Where Torrington was. I don't know if you can find that.
This one?
Google map. Well, that one, yeah. But it's hard to, because you can't see where I'm pointing to, but yeah, it's going to be hard to show, like, point it out to people.
Yeah, it is.
There it is.
No wonder the English never trust the Scots coming over from Mark.
No, they're a dodgy little bunch. I mean, technically they're the ones that start the English Civil War, because the Bishops' War are the Scots that start it. You know, this is the thing, is what starts the ball rolling in a way. Just before I get into the Battle of Torrington as well, you also get the emergence of the first professional army. So that is the new model army. The new model army is going to be eventually a redcoat, you know.
Right.
It's not exactly the descendant of that, but the colour is, I think it's the cheapest fabric they get at the time. That's probably why it's that colour. But the first professional army is born during the English Civil Wars. So they're professional, they're paid to do a job as a soldier. And it's the first time in British history you have a proper army. And again, from this English Civil War, eventually you are going to get the British Empire. You know. But after the war, of course, this country is completely ruined. It's broke. It's 9 years of bloody fighting. It's horrendous. You know, it wouldn't have been a nice place to live at the time. But anyway, going back to Torrington. So they're down in the southwest of England, okay? So the southwest of England, again, I'm trying to explain it, and I know it's hard to try and explain. But it's down there in the West Country. You've got Devon, Cornwall, Somerset, and another county called Dorset. And it's right. So I'm the opposite end. I'm in Kent, and it's right down the opposite end of the country. So if you was to drive, it'd take you about 5 hours. Now there's pockets of royalist, Cornish royalist, guys down there, and some of them are the commanders. They've gone down there to escape. Obviously, they want to get as far away as possible. They feel safe in Cornwall and Devon because it's a royalist stronghold. But of course, the Parliament army are seeking them out. They want to get rid of them. They've got Charles now. They don't want them around. So there's a siege at a place called Exeter. It's quite a big town. I don't know if it's a city. I think it is a town. I'm not sure. But at the time, they're walled. Yeah, most English towns are walled still at this point. So there's a siege. Fairfax has marched down there with Sir Thomas Fairfax. I don't know if you've got a picture of him.
I do have a picture of Thomas Fairfax.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
And we'll talk about his past in a minute because he is related to someone famous in America. So that's Sir Thomas Fairfax. He is the Parliament Army's leader. So he is the army commander, sorry. He's taken 20,000 men down to Exeter. And obviously they want to quell this rebellion that's going on down there. And that is actually true, yeah.
Mark said a larger percentage of Britain's population died in the English Civil War than in the Great War. Really?
Shows you that's massive, yeah. It was horrendous. I mean, you think there was famines going on and everything as well, Oh, dear me. Some people, they got some balls, haven't they? There you go. Anyway, Sir Thomas, Thomas Fairfax.
I think real quick, there's a promotion going on here about the. You see that?
I did.
That's what I said.
I know. I was like, hello.
Yeah, just go away.
For bothering you.
Hey, Crafty Pivota, would you like to learn about the English Civil War?
Obviously not.
Tune in.
No, that's Twitch for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Isn't that
Anyway,
awesome?
we'll ignore them.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Exeter. So they siege Exeter. 20,000 men he's got. They go down there. Now, I want to bring in an interesting character in a minute, but I'll just talk about Fairfax. So Sir Thomas Fairfax is a descendant of Lord Fairfax, who founds Fairfax County in Virginia. Now,
and Trousseau, who is
he's
pretty friendly with the Fairfax
cousin
family.
or something. That there is a relation there. So you've got an interesting story, Tyler, haven't you, about Washington?
Well, the Fairfax family and Washington were obviously very closely associated, specifically almost, I don't want to say single-handedly, but Washington owes a lot of his military experience to the Fairfax family for allowing him to be in the position to have some of this experience. There's also the fun story that we all have of Washington and Sally Fairfax as well. So I thought that was cool, and we brought up Fairfax earlier today as we were talking about this episode going forward. And that was kind of brought up. I was like, oh, okay. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah.
So I've got a little side story, which is quite, I find it comical. And Alan Mitchell, who is the local historian down in Torrington, who I've become very fond of over the years because he's a good guy. He's very passionate about the Battle of Torrington, and he looks after us when we're there. He does a good breakfast on a Saturday morning. Well, some lovely big sausages. But anyway, a little side note. There is a guy called Hugh Peter. Okay, sorry. And Hugh Peter is a religious nut job. And so they're marching down to Torrington down to the West Country across the Salisbury Plains. And do you know what's
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's the amount of innuendos that were just in that entire sentence. I'm sorry. That's my fault. This is why you come to the Unfiltered historian. No,
we do that all the time in Torrington. Yeah. Nice sausages.
I thought that was intentional. Like, I was just hearing all of these innuendos from the nice sausages.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes, you can.
Go
please.
for it.
See that comment? Okay. Could you at the end of this, if you could recommend any books about on this, can you throw some books ideas or?
Yeah, of course I can. Yeah, excellent. Not that I've read any of them, but yeah. Because I just don't read books, No. Anyway, I watch TV programs and things on YouTube.
Well, and if there's any of those too,
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I've got some good ones. So there's a guy called Hugh. I can't say his name now.
Hugh Peter. I know.
Hugh Peter. Yeah, and he is a religious nut job.
Right.
And as they're going across Salisbury Plain, so do you know what's on Salisbury Plain, everyone? Come on, Americans go crazy for this site.
I'm totally ignorant with all that.
Stonehenge.
Okay.
Stonehenge.
So to go down to the West Country, even now, I have to drive down the A303. Or I could go on the motorway, and it's a bit of a problem because everyone's rubbernecking to see these stones that have been there 2 million years, you know. And so all the way down, because he's so religious,
they're so small.
they are small. Yeah, they're just
Are
tiny.
they underwhelming in person?
Yes,
Are they really?
yes, it sucks. The cool mounds of all the burials all around are even cooler than the couple of rocks.
They're cooler, yeah. And there's other stuff around, like further around the Salisbury Plains. Salisbury Plains is a beautiful, beautiful place to go across. Actually, it's really it is really weird terrain. It's like it's rolling hills, but it's sort of like I don't know. I can't explain it. You have to. I'll take you there one day.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man.
But Stonehenge, right? So he comes past. He's so religious. He says to Fairfax, he says, "Give me a stick of dynamite." He says, "What do you want that for?" He says, "Well, he says it's connected to paganism. I want to blow it up." And he was being serious, and he went, "You're not blowing that up. Well, firstly, I need the dynamite. I'm going to have a siege in a minute." No, I want to blow up Stonehenge. So if he'd have had his way, he'd have blown up Stonehenge, and we wouldn't be visiting it, hadn't he? You know. But this is another thing. He's massively connected with America because in 1635 he goes to Boston. Okay, this guy, and he actually becomes a pastor at the church in Salem, Massachusetts. Right, and then he actually becomes very involved in the colonies. He is connected with Connecticut and the founding of that, and then he also helps in establish Harvard College, believe it or not. So this man that wanted to blow up Stonehenge is actually connected to America, the early days, you know. But he will get his comeuppance because he actually signs the death warrant of Charles I, and he will be hung, drawn, and quartered in 1660.
That's a fun way to go.
That is not a good place to go. In 1660, so he will get his comeuppance. And there's even talk that he was on the gallows when Charles lost his head. So going back to the English Civil Wars, obviously people might not know that Charles I, in the end, during the Second English Civil Wars, he causes a lot of problems. He causes the Second English Civil Wars. He's kept in captive. He escapes. He ends up in the Isle of Wight. Funnily enough, he actually gets his head stuck in the bars trying to escape from the Isle of Wight.
I shouldn't laugh at that.
When they catch him, his head is stuck between the bars. They're like, "What are you doing, mate?" He's like, "Well, I'm trying to get out." What do you think?
Not anymore. You're not.
Not anymore. You're stuck.
Oh, that's great.
So, but all that time, he was rallying up people. He was rallying up the Scot. He was trying to get the war started. And so another war breaks out. So at this point, there's sort of like a military coup of Parliament, and people are going, "We've got to get rid of this guy." And so it snowballs, and he ends up getting tried and then executed in January 1649. And you know, that's the end of Charles I, basically. But this is obviously before that, Torrington.
Right. So he's still alive when this is all happening.
Yes.
Okay.
But again, like I said, bear in mind all English cities at that time are walled, so there's a massive siege going on. But like I was saying earlier, the other guy, so if you bring up the Royalist guy, the Royalist commander, Lord Hopton, so Ralph Hopton has been involved in many English Civil War battles to this point. But he's down in Cornwall because he is meeting Prince Charles. And Prince Charles is Charles II. Will become Charles II. They're having a council of war in Truro because they're discussing how they're going to try and get the country back. So at this point, his son is still in England. He's angry. Obviously, his dad's in captivity. He wants to help him out, you know, so he's the prince at the time. So they get wind of Exeter happening. So he says, right, let's go to Exeter to try and relieve the siege. Now, the quickest way, there was a quicker route, but Torrington is also on one of the main thoroughfares to Plymouth. Which is a major port, and I mean major, you know, down in the southwest. That's where a lot of stuff comes in from the New World, you know, and like tobacco probably and all that sort of stuff. But so he decides that he needs to also swell the ranks because he's only got 7,000 men. So he says, right, let's go to some of these towns like Torrington because they will give us men. So he goes into Torrington, but also his baggage train has been bogged down in the mud. So you hear the American Civil War stories, the roads are the same in the 1600s. They don't change much when you get to the 1800s. They're shit, basically. So he gets his baggage train is about a mile long, gets bogged down. So he waits in Torrington because he's waiting for the baggage train to catch up. But Fairfax does not mess about. Fairfax is one of the best commanders this country's ever seen because he does not mess about. So he splits his forces and he goes, right, let's go and find him. And it just so happens that he's in Great Torrington at the time. But again, this is one of the main thoroughfares. And there's some other major little towns in that area called Bideford and Barnstaple. Some of them, one of them was actually a parliamentarian place. But anyway, Lord Hopton finds out about him being down there. And so he is going to send people out to find out what's going on. And also what they do is they barricade Torrington. So they barricade it from there. I think it's called East Street or something like that. So they barricade it. Then we get to the 16th of February, 1646, as Alan Mitchell says. And it starts on the outside of town. And I do actually have an account that was written at the time. So
please, that's awesome.
It says, it reads, the accounts that 2 bodies of men meet 6 fields breadth from the outside of the town where I did this. It's in like an old language. It's hard to read. Oh yeah, that's it. Where they exchange discourse language or something along them lines. I can't remember the word now. And musket balls through the hedgerows. So basically, they were swearing at each other and like shooting each other through the hedgerows. So that's a little account of that. But the royalists then return to town because obviously they push them through town and they end up behind a barricade. Now, this is the thing. We go on about Fredericksburg being the first urban warfare in American history.
Sure.
Well, technically, Torrington is one of the first, and there's probably been more before that, but it's urban warfare. In 1646, there's urban warfare in the streets of Torrington. The Great Torrington is very small rural town in the middle of Devon. It's very small. Even today's standard, it's small. But then it would have been even smaller. It would have been a town square, a few houses, and a few farms. It sits up on a hill as well. But they get there and they barricade themselves in at first. But this brave captain, Captain Bennett, rides around and finds his way through some gardens or yards, as you would call them. He even rides through people's houses, apparently, and he comes out behind the barricade. And for some reason, these royalists just lose the plot and run away. So they leave themselves open. So the town's open for business now. They've smashed down the barricade. But at this point, and I would love a picture of the Black Horse pub if you wouldn't mind.
I can do that. Let's see here. This is the only one that's loading. Let's see if it works.
There you go. That
works? Okay, cool.
That is the Black Horse pub. That's still there, and I'll explain a little bit more later. Unfortunately, it's been closed again this year. So that pub was there during the battle. So Ralph Hopton is sitting there eating his supper when someone comes in and says, "Oh, we've got a problem, sir. The parliamentarian," there's Sir Ralph Hopton. Do you know that picture is in Alan Mitchell's
Looks like he was enjoying his dinner.
He stares at me every time I come in the damn house. That bloke, he does not like me. It's an eerie painting. Now, he's sitting there eating his supper, enjoying himself, although he shouldn't be because he knows they're coming. And there's absolute pandemonium in the streets of Torrington because the parliamentarians are coming down the street. So he gets on his horse and he rides down one of the streets and he bumps into some pikemen. And one of the pikemen stabs him straight through the mouth, straight through his ear. He falls off his horse. So that's basically, for the royalists, that's the end. They've lost their commander. There's nobody really good in control.
They're done.
Obviously, there's a lot more to the battle than that. Obviously, there is. But also, can you try and imagine that if you're living in Great Torrington at the time, that this storm is going through your town?
Right, like what that must feel like.
Been, like Fredericksburg, it must have been the most horrendous. I know a lot of people fled Fredericksburg, but I think with this, they didn't have the time to.
Because it was so sudden.
So quickly,
right.
And, these people were probably scared to death, I mean, horrendous stuff. Anyway, he gets put on now this is, Alan actually put it a different way, but I put it a bit of a nicer way because I didn't want to offend anyone. He's a very large man. Alan describes him as something else. And so they have to pick him up and they bring over this stupid little horse that's not carrying his weight. And it falls, and the horse falls over and Lord Hopton falls on the floor. So this poor bloke's got a pike through the mouth. They're getting destroyed. So he falls off the horse. So anyway, they drag him
I
off.
shouldn't laugh at that. Poor guy.
They go down a hill called East Street. Now,
Mm.
East Street goes down to where Al lives, and it's called a little hamlet called Taddypool.
Mm.
There's a major bridge that goes over there, and you know I was telling you about the main thoroughfare to Plymouth. Well, that is the main road at the time. Now, I don't think you've got a picture of the bridge, but the bridge at the time.
I don't.
No, I didn't send you one. I don't think I have got one, but sorry, guys. You just
Okay.
put up Taddypool Bridge, and it'll come up properly. But the bridge at the time is only wide enough for a wagon. Nowadays, obviously, you get a car across it. The bridge is medieval bridge. You know, it's been there since God knows when. But it crosses a major river called the River Torridge. The River Torridge drains down from a place called Dartmoor National Park. And so it's a national park. And I'll tell you now, if you go up to Dartmoor, it's a completely different weather to what you would get if you're down a little bit lower, you know. So you're going on about topography again and all that they don't fight up there. But yeah, that's an amazing place to go. It's really strange. You could go there in the summer, like it could be 30 degrees, you know, whatever. Not 30 degrees, but, you know, 30 degrees C. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, sorry. I don't work in Fahrenheit. And it will be cold up there and wet. You know, it's like that. It's got its own atmosphere. It's, you know, but it's a dark place. They've got a prison there called Dartmoor Prison, and it's one of the most barren places. They sent people there from the war. Was it the War of 1812?
1812.
Yeah, the prison's still there. The actual original prison from that, even from the Napoleonic Wars, they used it. So it's a really horrible place. It's still used. It's still in the prison circuit today. They obviously built modern things onto it, but yeah, so that goes down. So they've got to cross this little tiny bridge. So that actually gives them time, you know. So the Royalists escape over this bridge. Now, where Alan Mitchell lives, his house, part of it is 1300s, I think, and he had there was a smithy there. So that's a you know, a smith's. I don't know what kind of smithing they did, but they use it as a last line of defence. And they've got quite a few musketeers, so they give up. You know, they stop the parliamentarians from chasing them across the bridge. So a last stand sort of happens right outside Alan's gates. So that's really cool. Every time you go to do the Battle of Torrington, you're standing there on the actual ground, which is really cool. And of course, because he's so close to it all, he's found so many artifacts, which I'll talk about in a minute. Basically, a be all and end all. That's sort of the end of the battle. But something really awful happens now, and I'm going to get into that. So I'm just trying to find the actual account. Okay, so this is an account by a guy named Joshua Sprigg, who was personal chaplain of Sir Thomas Fairfax, and he knew someone in the House, the Speaker of the Houses of Parliament. So we know his sources, because in those days sources could be quite, you know, you don't know whether you could trust them, but we think we can trust this one, Alan says. So he says that at 11:30 at night, there'd be a massive explosion. The ground shaketh, and a great ton of flame in the sky like hell itself. Mason, lead, and timber do fall about the town, staving in the roofs of many houses, killing many men. A great web of lead nailed to an oaken beam falls from the sky and kills the horse of Master Rhodes, a captain in the cavalry, right beside Sir Thomas Fairfax. So Sir Thomas Fairfax is sitting on standing right there when the explosion happens, and this guy's horse is just killed straight in front of him and splattered everywhere. Imagine that. Imagine that sort of a psychological effect that it has on you. And a barrel of gunpowder lands in the town square, smashing open and spilling its contents. So the church, St. Michael's Church. So what happened was, during the battle, like I said, it was a very quick battle. All of the royalist prisoners were put into the church, but it was also the gunpowder store. And a guy named Robert Watt was paid 30 guineas to light the gunpowder. What a lovely bloke. Because I tell you what, he didn't get time to spend it. Can you imagine lighting that much? So
that's insane. It's like a suicide mission.
There was 80 barrels of gunpowder, which equates to half a ton of powder. So when you think of the gunpowder plot, there's only 36 barrels of gunpowder. This was 80. Now, funny enough, it didn't destroy the whole church.
Really? Church was
because
still standing after this?
not all of it. Obviously,
Not
it
all
did
of it.
destroy a lot of it, but a lot of the explosion funneled up
Hmm.
the spire,
Okay.
and that's it went. But the thing is, they found obviously bodies and masonry and they're still and what was really good fun when we went in 2022. Alan, well, it weren't fun. Sorry, what was really cool. Sorry, was Alan Mitchell was showing me this masonry that had been found down in the rivers, and they bring it back up to the church, and we're talking like big blocks of stone, and I'd never seen it before. And I mean, you can watch it on my YouTube channel. There's a playlist called "The Battle of Great Torrington" Almost Live. We went around all the main sites, and Alan explains the story better than me, you know. But yeah, it killed all 167 royalist prisoners inside. Obviously, killed other people, and it was horrendous. And you know, it blew off the roofs of all the houses. So Torrington's left in a wreck, and the next morning, Sir Thomas Fairfax, and I don't have the proclamation on me, unfortunately, but Alan Mitchell reads it normally, and I'll get into that in a minute on the anniversary. But he reads a proclamation to the townsfolk, basically telling them, if you surrender, there'll be no harm done to you, and we'll just move on. But if you raise your arms again, we will come down on you swift and hard, sort of thing, you know. So he tells them, you know, because they're royalist sympathisers. But after all that's gone on, I don't think anyone's going to be doing anything because, you know, war's a horrible thing, you know. But yeah, so that's basically the Battle of Torrington in a nutshell. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if you've got any questions about the battle or anything that I could answer.
No, I mean, if we do, we can definitely field some questions throughout the rest of this podcast if anybody has any. But what I find interesting and what I would like to segment into now is you kind of have that experience of going to Torrington almost annually. You're almost going every year to participate in the events that you said, you know, briefly that there is a march every year with reenactors and that sometimes people go through the streets. I would love to hear about your experience this year and
Yeah, so I
really
want to tell you
what
about,
goes into all of that.
yeah, so I'll tell you about my first experience first. So in 2004 was the first time I ever went down there. So if you take away the COVID year, I've been going there 20 years. Well, 19 years minus one because I couldn't go COVID year. And that's the year me and Alan Mitchell did a podcast. And I will apologize because I was very new to podcasting at the time. And it's a good podcast, but it's, you know, it's got its flaws, you know, very inexperienced, didn't have a clue what I was doing. But you know what I said to Al? I said, look, I can't come down, let's do. And we did it on the night we would have been there. But the first night I went down there, first time, 2004, I just joined the Sealed Knot the year before. So for people that are not familiar with that, that's a reenactment site here in England that reenacts the English Civil Wars. I joined that in 2003. I was in the pike, do pike pushing, it hurts. That's why I now do American Civil War. But they share history with the Southern Skirmish Association because both societies, so Southern Skirmish Association does American Civil War, were formed in 1968. They're both formed the same year. So they're very old societies. They're over 50 years old. And the Sealed Knot is bigger. The Sealed Knot is on its day, its time. When I joined, it was huge. We were talking a couple of thousand on a battlefield. It was surreal. I mean, I remember going out there as a young, you know, I was just in my early 20s, and I was like, oh my god. But do you know what? I wasn't interested in history at all at the time because it was like, you know, it was a drinking session and go away, camp for the weekend, have a party, have a fight, go home. You know. As I got older, I started learning more about the history because people would ask you questions sometimes, and you'd be like, yeah, I don't know, you know. So anyway, my friend that got us into reenacting, he used to go to a place called Great Torrington. He's been going there a couple of years. He said, "Oh, I'll go to this really great place. You want to come down?" But unfortunately, at the time, me and my friend didn't drive, and we didn't have anyone that could get us there. Now, getting there in a car will take you 5 hours, so we had to get a bus from Kent to London, from London to Exeter, Exeter to Torrington. It took us 8 hours because obviously the stops and everything. But London to Exeter is about 6 hours on a coach because it's so bloody slow. You know, you're going 60 miles an hour on the motorway. It's just not fast. Anyway, we get to Exeter and there's this old boy sitting at the bus stop and I'll do his accent. I went, "Hello, mate." I said, "We're going to Great Torrington tonight." I said, "How long is it till we get there?" "Oh, that's another 2 hours yet." I went, "What?" On a double-decker bus. Now, I don't know if anyone's been on a double-decker bus in
I have
America.
not. No.
Now, imagine going on a double-decker bus through English country lanes. late at night. It's quite an experience, let me tell you. And it was winter weather as well. It was like, spitting around, windy. It was quite interesting. Anyway, we went on this mammoth journey to get there. And at the time in Torrington, you had about 20 pubs. Now you've got about 3 because it's just recessions and COVID. It's killed the town. It's not it's a lovely town, but there's not. If you haven't got transport, and it's hard to get a job, things like that. It's quite isolated. A lot of their places have closed down. They had a dairy, they had all that sort of stuff. Some of it's closed down, so it's an isolated place. So getting to it's not easy. But yeah, we get down there. I walk in the pub, and the place just erupted because they were so happy that we'd made it there, and we got drunk that night. Let me tell you. That was bloody tastic. They even used to have a nightclub out the back of this pub, and they used to sell like food out of a window, like takeaway food. That was quite funny. It's completely changed out. But then obviously we went in the next year and the year after, and we had bigger groups of us. And as time went on, the group got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Eventually, we met Alan Mitchell one day because Alan Mitchell is in quite a few bands. He was in a punk band, but he also did folk. So he did a folk. He was a folk band in the pub, and we got talking to him. Of course, he's really into the Battle of Torrington. Lots of other conversations took place, but that's for another day and another podcast, completely different. Tyler knows what I'm talking about. But he's such a lovely guy. And it got to the point where he was paying for hotels and bed and breakfasts. And he went, "No, you're coming to stay at my house. You're not bloody paying for that anymore. You come and you." He goes, "You guys come all the way from Kent to come and support our march. And some people in the town can't even be bothered to come out their front door and support something on their own doorstep. I'll put you up." And then that was it. I think we've been staying there about 9 years now. And so it's like an annual thing for us. We have to go, And so basically what it is a commemorative march. It'll happen closest weekend to the event. This year it was early because people that were involved in that event were busy this weekend because the anniversary was actually Friday this year. So we went a year early, but, and there's also a society in Torrington called the Cavaliers. And basically they're like I suppose they're like a committee group, organise events basically for the town. Now, the town is one of the only towns in England that still does the Mayfair Festival. Mayfair Festival is a huge thing back in the day where you had a maypole dancing and, real fillet. And so it's such a community-orientated town. It's amazing. And, it's even to the point where you go down there 19 years, you know all the locals, So each year you'll go in, you'll get a cuddle and, hello, and it's, you have a good old drink, with these people and you have a laugh and it's just an amazing place. But again, the reason we do it is for the commemorative march. So that will then, we're marching to the square. Again, it's got smaller. We'll have pike, musket. We're marching. There we go. They're the Cavaliers, by the way, with the flames. Alan Mitchell standing there with a proclamation. The whole
That's Alan there. Yeah, there he is. Look at him.
Yeah, in the black. Yeah, he looks like the Witchfinder General, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Look like some Plymouth colony stuff. That's cool.
So we march to the square, and the mayor comes out and reads a speech. And one thing he always points out, ladies and gentlemen, is the English Civil War was obviously bloody and it was horrible. But one thing that was born out of the English Civil Wars is we gifted the world democracy. So if people are not familiar, after the English Civil Wars, yes, we do have a turbulent time, but the king and the queen loses their power as they used to have, if you know what I mean. It will never be the same again. Parliament is now in power and we vote for who we want to be our leader. Do you know what I mean? I know you guys went right over the top and kicked us completely out, But democracy comes from the English Civil Wars, So that's part of the march. That's marching down. That's we actually use we don't carry pikes, me and Anthony. We carry halberds. Alan's got some proper antiques from the Victorian period that we use, which are quite cool.
Also, let's talk about this. You sent me.
So this is the mass grave. So after we finished and the mayor's done his speech and Alan's done his speech to the town, and so Alan Mitchell will read the proclamation. We go round to the mass grave. So underneath that is all of the people that died in the church. bones, arms, legs, a bit like probably some of the battles at Fredericksburg. You know, your cemetery, you've got all arms and legs because you can't find everyone.
Right.
And they all got buried under there. And so we lay a wreath and we have a minute's silence. And it's very, very amazing atmospheric experience. And so the church is just off to the left-hand side. Another interesting fact about Torrington Church, it's got something to do with Henry VII's mum or something. I think Alan Mitchell was telling me. Torrington's, you know, it's an amazing little town. So if you ever go to England and you end up in the West Country, make sure you go and visit this amazing little town that loves its history. They've got an amazing museum which goes through the town's history, not just the Civil War, but other periods of history. And it's just a fabulous place to go, you know. So that's the story of Great Torrington, really. Oh, yeah, let's get on to the artifacts.
Yeah, I forgot I see a whole bunch of artifacts. I'm like, oh, we got to talk about this.
Podcast I did with Alan Mitchell, which is, again, it's there's some faults, but it's still a good podcast. He says he was the bane of his history teacher because he would come in with a cardboard box of more artifacts from the Battle of Torrington. And his history teacher used to be like, oh, you know, because he was jealous, you know. So this was a cannonball that was used, you know. That was one of them. There is other artifacts which are amazing. One of them, somebody just knocked at his door one day, a farmer, and he went, oh, I thought you might like this. And it was when we can find it. Got it? That's the one. So this was found, and what Alan thinks is it was used as a gardening tool or something. Some old person had found it in their house or in their room. It was stuffed somewhere, I don't know where, and used it as a digging tool or something, you know. But anyway, some old bloke brought it up to you. Oh, I know you're interested in this. You can have this. And it is a pike head from the Battle of Torrington. And the wood is still in the shaft. Oh, that's a halberd from the Battle of Torrington. And there's the wood. So that wood is 180 odd years old from the Battle of Torrington. Maybe it was the one that stabbed Lord Hopton. Who knows?
No, that's some serious wood in the shaft there, though.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Sorry about the innuendos, but yeah, that is like, how to touch that. That's like, whoa.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I mean, his house is like a museum.
Is it?
I mean, he's got a Kentucky long rifle. Wow, that's amazing.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
See what else?
It's got gaming pistols and everything. And
that's the cannonball.
And there's a clay pipe from the Battle of Torrington. So again, tobacco was, you know, flooding into the country at the time from Virginia, probably. That's where it was coming from, and they were smoking it.
And you said that's not it. The halberd's right here.
Yeah, that's the halberd. There is also a rapier sword, which I haven't photographed, which he found as well. But again, the other thing he finds plenty of is, and I managed to get one off him because I said, oh, I really want one because I haven't got one. He said, well, I've got so many of them. Is a musket ball from the Battle of Great Torrington.
Oh, you got one.
That was fired. Well, it might have been fired. It might have been dropped. Who knows? So that was present 108 years ago at the Battle of Great Torrington. Sorry about the accent, but that's how they say it. But, you know, I really appreciate you letting me share this because
I really appreciate you coming on here and telling us a story.
Just like Gettysburg is, Torrington is very integral in the story of me as a historian because being exposed to the passion that town shows for their history is ingrained on me, and it will never leave me.
And I appreciate you being willing to come on here and sharing this story with us.
And one of these days,
I hear it every year, but I love it so much that I just want to continue to push it out. So, I mean, you being able to take the time to share this with us, I appreciate it. One of these days, I'm going to get that atlas and dive into the English Civil War. Man.
You are.
I want it so bad, too.
What you need to do is get your butt on a plane and get your ass over here.
I'll get one over there.
Yeah.
Bring it with
and then I'll take you down there.
That would be cool.
You know, we'll go on a road trip to Great Torrington, and we can even go past Stonehenge and blow it up if you want. I'll get sacked for that, won't I?
Let's just do like they did in National Lampoon's Vacation.
Yeah, go round the roundabout. There's Big Ben, kids, in the House of the Parliament.
Parliament. Yeah,
I love that.
I love it.
And Eric Idle randomly showing up and almost getting killed. That's the best part.
Well, hey, George Washington's birthday.
That's right. We are also on the week of George Washington's birthday. Today is President's Day, not actually Washington's birthday.
And
Darren,
Anthony, you
what do
said
you
you
know
wanted
about
some book recommendations. Now, I don't really read books, and I did buy an English Civil War one. It's called The Battle of the Three Kingdoms. It's quite a big old book. Oh, look, that's a good picture. Look, behind bars where he belongs. But no, I'm only joking. I'll tell you what, when I got there and saw that, that was like gold. I thought I have to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he looks like when he's not behind bars. For those of
Darren's
you that
always right
don't
in
know,
front of him.
so he is actually by the what's it, the art gallery, I think it is,
Mm-hmm.
in Trafalgar Square. I think that's where he is. I can't remember. Yeah, he's somewhere. No, yeah, he's near Nelson's column, something like that. Anyway, can't remember. Yeah, the National Portrait Gallery. That's it. That's where he is. And I didn't know he was there till Gina told me, because obviously we're going up there doing the John Davis monument stuff. And she went, "Yeah, George Washington's over there." I went, "Shut up!" But apparently he's not standing on English soil. It's Virginian soil underneath, because he vowed never to stand on English soil. So that soil underneath is apparently Virginian soil in London. So when I go up there next time, I'm going to... No, I'm not really. Anyway, yeah, going back to book recommendations, there's a book, Anthony, called The War of the Three Kingdoms, but it's a real heavy, fat, massive. I do own a copy, but take you a week. Well, it'll take you about 2 years to read it. So I mean, but this is my favourite one, and this is for like people like me that are not big readers. It's quite a recent one. It's called The English Civil Wars, and it's like an atlas, and it's got every single.
I want that.
It's even got the battle map of Great Torrington in there, and I did send you a picture of that, Anthony. Anthony, sorry, Tyler, if you can find it, if you can show people what it looks
Awesome.
like
Let me
inside,
see.
because it's got all the people on there and where they go, and it's even got Taddyport on there, which is quite cool.
Wow, how did I not put that one up there? Here, let me get that up now. Those are good maps too. It looks like
They are, yeah, they're very good. Yeah, most of them.
Can you? Oh,
There you go.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's
I like
Great
that.
Torrington, and there's Taddyport, where the arrows are going. That's where they escaped. And as you can see, they literally just steamrolled their way in through town. And again, at the time, it's so small. There's literally hardly anything there, just a town square and a few houses. But I mean, obviously, it's bigger now, But yeah, you can see the scale of it now. It's quite amazing place, really is.
Now, is the Tadaport Bridge? Is that where Al's at? Where
That's
you
where
go?
Alan Mitchell lives, yeah. And I'll tell you another little bit of history about Taddyport is it used to be a leper colony.
Interesting.
And apparently the name Limeys comes from that period when they were, like, obviously when people with leprosy were walking on the road, they would squeeze lemon or limes on the floor or something to sanitize it. That's what he told me anyway.
Interesting.
You limeys.
You limeys. Well,
Yeah,
Darren,
that
again,
is a
thanks.
good book.
Yeah, I'm gonna take your recommendation. I should have gotten it already, but I don't have it. It'll be acquired soon. I do want to thank you for coming on and
Yeah, no
absolutely just
problem,
doing a
mate.
great
I
job of
absolutely
telling the
really
story
loved being
again.
able to be an expert for a change.
Yeah, it was awesome. And you'll be with us on Wednesday, yeah?
I will be, yes. I
That's what I'm
cannot
talking
wait.
about. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're excited. And Anthony will be with us on Wednesday too.
Yeah, so no, I
Yes.
just want to give
Yes.
the so guys, please
Right.
go if you want to know more about the Battle of Great Torrington,
Mhm.
go to American Civil War and UK History's YouTube channel. Like I said, me and Alan Mitchell did some series of live videos on Facebook, and I called it not live because the North Devon signal can be a bit of a pain in the backside. So I called it Torrington almost live because I didn't think I was going to be able to go live. But guess what? Every single one went live. And so that didn't really work, but I kept the name and they're all on there. We did an extra video last year because the Black Horse was open. And sorry, there was one story about the Black Horse I forgot to tell you.
No, please do.
So Lord Hopton, they come in. Oh, sir, come on, quick, we've got to go. So he leaves his supper half eaten, a massive bag of gold, because that was how they paid their troops, and his fur jacket. And he just left it there. And so when Sir Thomas Fairfax come in there, he went, "Oh, it's Christmas Day." And I dare say somebody ate his half-eaten supper. Now, I kept saying to the landlady at the time, you need to put a sign at the top of the bar above the bar saying, Lord Hopton's supper was half eaten here, or something like that, you know. But that pub, going back to going to Torrington, again, it's been closed. But imagine sitting in the actual real pub where Lord Hopton was sitting eating his supper, drinking beer, and commemorating the Battle of Torrington. I'll tell you what, you don't get better than that.
I
And
know
again,
that would be pretty
that
cool.
pub is 1300 years, 1300s. That if the walls could speak,
Yeah, what that
imagine
place
the
was
people
seen.
that have been in there and talked about things in there. That is history.
Yeah, it
I
is.
would not sleep in there. That place is haunted.
I believe it. I
Yeah.
want to go to a pub like that so bad. That would be
You
the
walk
coolest
in the
experience.
winter and the fire's on, and it's got that smell to it, you know, and it's just old, and it's proper atmospheric, and yeah, we miss the Black Horse. We miss it.
Hope
So,
it opens soon.
I mean, we've been going to the Cavalier instead. It's a good pub, but if you want to get the real sense of the history, you sit in the Black Horse pub and have a beer on Friday night and bore the locals to tears.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Anthony, do you have a closer for us tonight?
I do not.
You do not.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed story time with Darren.
Yeah,
I did. I learned a lot.
we did. Yeah. Thanks for coming on again, Darren.
And unfortunately, I can't sing Alan's song, so I'll just sing the chorus. But Alan Mitchell did a song called The Battle of Great Torrington, and it was the password for the Royalists. So they had trouble identifying each other, so they come up with passwords. And the password for the Royalists were, "We were with you." So that is his song. "We are with you, the password for the king." And it's a fantastic song. And it's the end of the podcast, so give
Yes,
it a
it is.
because it is bloody brilliant.
It's fun to watch that song.
Anyway, I'll stop rabbiting on now. Sorry.
You're
Cheers,
good, brother.
everybody.
You guys have a great night. We will see you guys Wednesday night at 7:30.